Let's bring on our good friend Chris Carlson from Syracuse.com. Chris, how are you today? How's your day going?
Apparently better than yours, you guys. Apparently.
Yes, yeah. Paulie is frustrated. I understand. I share in his frustration. I get it. Let's start by talking some Cuse football with you, Chris, and the big news from the last couple of days, and that is the hiring of Vince Karras as the new defensive coordinator from Toledo. His track record is very impressive. We laid that out yesterday. What are your thoughts on this hire?
You know, I wrote this morning, both with him and Juan Castillo, who the university has announced, but Pete Thamel's reported he'll be the offensive line coach, and Pete's pretty reliable. You know, in both cases, it seems like Fran Brown has really prioritized a lot of experience, right? Vince Karras has run his own program at Mount Union. He's been a defensive coordinator for 5 years at Toledo. You know, I think 3 of the 5, he was in the top 30 in the country in scoring defense. He's never been below average. You know, he has a long track record leading a team and a defense, which is very different than the route they went with Elijah Robinson, right? They tried to take the elite recruiter and elite position coach and sort of hoped that he'd be ready for the step up. We saw the same thing, right? It worked the same way with George McDonald, you know, under Scott Schaefer a few years ago, and you know, it just didn't work with Elijah Robinson. And then Juan Castillo is a guy who's coached 30 years in the NFL and has worked with Andy Reid for more than a decade, spent time with Sean McDermott, John Harbaugh, you know, a lot of really, really respected NFL names. So again, just really sort of prioritized experience at a high level in both those hires. And I think it's different from Fran's first staff. He brought in a lot of sort of young guys who were like him, energetic recruiters. They upgraded the talent level on the team immediately. And now they've brought in a couple guys who have sort of longer track records of molding that talent. So that seems like a sensible road go down, I think.
And in the case of Karras, you know, this is a guy that he had a lot of options on the table, right? I mean, it was well documented that Nebraska wanted him, Toledo wanted him, UConn wanted him. There was a report out that another ACC school wanted him, and he picked Syracuse. What does that say about, I guess, about where Syracuse is right now in the pecking order, that they were somehow able to land what seems like a really good hire?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like recruiting, right? It's always a good sign when the guy that you want is wanted by other programs that are generally bigger than you.
It's a good point.
Considered that way, perceived that way, right? And obviously, you know, to me, it says that Syracuse is playing in the right financial sandbox, right? I don't know Vince Karras, but I can't imagine if Nebraska was going to pay him loads more than Syracuse. Loads more, that he would be in Syracuse. So they've got to be at least in the ballpark financially with what Nebraska is offering. And then there was something else about the job that made Syracuse the more appealing spot, whether he clicked with Fran a little bit more, whether it's having a little bit more say in certain decisions. Maybe Syracuse paid more money. I don't know. That's generally not the way we think around here, but I suppose it's possible. But I certainly think, right, the commitment financially to pay the top leaders in the football program that has been increased over the years. You know, you sort of see it again here.
So Elijah Robinson, we assume, is leaving, right? There's all this talk that, you know, he hadn't signed anything with LSU yet, and other people are courting him. It doesn't sound like he's coming back to Syracuse, though, wherever he lands up, if it's LSU or elsewhere. Nick Williams, we know, is going to Florida State. Those two guys in particular, we know Nick Williams is leaving. We assume Elijah's leaving. Assuming both those guys are gone, how big of a loss is that for this team, I guess, especially from a recruiting perspective? Does it concern you that those two guys are moving on?
I mean, a little bit. Again, right, the same logic we're using with Vince Karras, you have to certainly use with Elijah Robinson in terms of, like, bigger programs wanting him. And I think you probably have to use it with Nick Williams. You know, Elijah has proven over the years that he's certainly a good position coach. And you lose that. hasn't necessarily proven that, but a lot of energy, certainly a good recruiter, thought of highly as a young mind. You don't like losing, either of those guys. But Fran's gift is recruiting, right? So if you're going to have less of that skill in your staff, to me, that's where you would want to lose a little bit, right? You would trade off the coaching experience, the coaching acumen for the recruiting. So they're losses, but Fran tells us a lot that he knows how to recruit. So it seems like that's his strength, and I would think that he could compensate for some of it.
Yeah, and along those lines, I mean, we've heard Fran in the past say that guys are coming here to play for me, right? That yes, they have relationships with the coordinators and the assistant coaches, and those guys can go and visit them, but ultimately, right, they're coming to play for the head coach. Do you think he's kind of banking on that these two guys are obviously losses, but I'm still among the best recruiters in the country, if not the best, and we'll replace them with other guys. We'll go out and we'll still get the players we want because I build relationships and they're coming to play for me.
I think he's banking on that, and I think there was also probably a little bit of I talked with Cameron Wilson when I was down in Florida for the Miami game, and Cameron said that Fran made that point. You're coming for me. You're not coming for the position coaches. You're not coming for the defensive coordinators. I think there might have been a little table setting, right? Like Fran sort of knew this was coming and needed to, make sure that the recruits didn't feel like the rug was pulled out from under them at the last minute, that they came to play for Elijah, and all of a sudden, we're a week after signing day. The kids are now committed. Oh, now he's out of here, right? That always looks bad. It's one of the sketchiest parts to me of college football is how kids get locked in, and then a week later, everybody somehow, changes spots, and the guys that recruited them are gone. So I think it's Fran's way of making sure that that didn't happen, or that those kids are making the choice to come to Syracuse for the right reasons and the reasons that will remain consistent.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the table setting in the release from Syracuse University about Vince Karras coming to Syracuse. It was indicated that Fran had been talking with him for more than a month. So that it sounds like this was ongoing, and as you say, kind of in the back of his mind. And I think table setting is a good way to put it. Along those lines, how much of the blame do you put on the coordinators for the second half of the season?
It's so hard.
A lot of little. I mean, it's I know it is a hard question.
Well, and right. My answer wants to be, I'll tell you next year when I see it with a different coordinator. A decent amount. Certainly on defense with Elijah Robinson, like it hasn't worked in multiple years. They are young on the defensive line. I've never felt like they've had a good defensive line, and you can do a lot more things when you have a good defensive line. So I do think Elijah was working with a little bit of a personnel disadvantage. But obviously, it never looks good. At the end, it was really, really bad. And that falls on the defensive coordinator. And then with Jeff Nixon, obviously his system works when he has a good quarterback. And then you lose Steve Angeli and it all falls apart. It's not like Jeff Nixon isn't a qualified offensive coordinator and doesn't know what he's doing. But you certainly would like to think that he could have done a better job figuring something out and maybe MacGyvering his way to another win. But it's really hard to win without a quarterback, and it's really hard to figure it out without a quarterback. So I do, could it have been better? Yes. Do I want to run Jeff Nixon out of town or think that he's not a good offensive coordinator? No. I think he could have done a better job this year.
Is it just the quarterback though? Like we were told, Yassine Willis was a great running back. Like how did the run game not improve?
No, I mean the offensive line wasn't good. I still think that sort of Yassine Willis is a downhill runner. And, like, when you don't have a good offensive line or offensive line that's getting any push, that's not a great fit. I think the most alarming part to me with Jeff is Yasin did not get any better, I don't think, as a pass catcher. And we heard all offseason he was adding that to his game. And that didn't happen. And that would have been a way to utilize him if it had worked, to get him in space, to throw screen passes. And he just never looked comfortable, as a receiving option, which made him a really one-dimensional running back. So, you're right. The offensive line did not make progress. Again, that's an area where they brought in, 3 new guys. I think they made some bad choices in the portal on the offensive line. So you're right. It's not just the quarterback, but I think when we talked last time, Paulie, you made the point, rightfully so, that if you don't have a quarterback, teams are playing the run a little bit differently than they are if they're worried about you throwing it.
All right, let's talk big picture, if we could, for a moment, Chris, about this Notre Dame situation and the ACC. And obviously the two sides are not happy with one another, and Notre Dame's not going to the college football playoff. What do you make of what happened on Sunday with Miami getting in, Alabama getting in, Notre Dame being left out, and then Notre Dame kind of going on the offensive and blaming the ACC for it? Yeah,
I'm okay with whatever choice was made. I think I'm an AP top 25 voter, and once you get past the top few teams, you can make a case for any team. You take a tier of 5 teams, and you could put any one of them at the top of the tier for some reason. And I think at that point in the college football playoffs, you could make an argument for a number of teams, and whoever you pick, it's fine. You're not leaving out undefeated Florida State anymore. So whoever gets left out, they had a chance, and they didn't earn their way in, and they left it in the hands of a committee, and ultimately that's their problem. I do think that the way it happened, where Notre Dame was ranked ahead of Miami week after week after week by this committee, which was presumably putting some thought into this process, and then at the last minute, when nothing really changed that would have impacted those teams' resume, in fact, Boise State winning its conference probably would have helped Notre Dame. Somehow Notre Dame was put behind Miami. That I understand Notre Dame's frustration with that. I actually do understand them not playing the bowl game when this group had told them the whole time that, yeah, you're going to be in the playoffs. And then at the last minute, they flipped them. I would have a hard time getting up for that bowl game, too. I do think it's ridiculous that they are blaming the ACC for going to the mat for their full-time member when Notre Dame is the team that and the school that refuses to join the conference full-time. What do they expect from the ACC in that situation? I think that is sort of the ridiculous part to me.
100%. 100%. I completely agree with you. I guess last question, we've kept you a while, and I appreciate your time, but what do you think is going to come of bowl games now? The non-college football playoff games, the fact that Iowa State, Baylor, Notre Dame, all three, I'm sure there will be more, have backed out and said, you know what, we're good, we're not going to play this postseason.
Yeah, especially as they expand the playoffs. Right? Like if it goes to 16 or if it eventually goes to 24, it's hard to imagine those bowl games mattering in that situation at all. The only thing would anybody be interested in a college football NIT where the group of 5 teams have a sort of a better chance at winning something? I don't know, but it certainly seems like bowl games, it feels like they're going to end up probably the way that they are in the college football playoffs, where the ones that can get folded into a playoff, could we have the Pop-Tarts as the first bowl as the first round game? That's maybe a way to keep some of that tradition alive. But it's hard to imagine, as standalone entities that they have a long shelf life.
Would that be just 12?
I do. I love New Year's Day and watching that stuff, but they've just outlived their usefulness with the playoffs.
So would it just be 12 teams in the postseason? Like, I can't imagine that.
I don't hate
they're talking about.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
They're talking about expanding it to 16 and maybe 24. So I don't know. Do you I don't need to really watch the 30th ranked team.
No, I get that. There are too many bowl games. It just seems like it just sucks for a college age kid to put in all that effort and then it's just gone because you finished third in the ACC.
I don't hate the idea of an NIT. Like, again, you got to incentivize. We talked about that yesterday, Paulie, about, do you put NIL money in a pot and, whoever wins it gets the NIL or whatever the case may be. Or to Chris's point about a group of 5, like, I wouldn't hate that. It's more college football and, the group of 5 teams might like to play for some sort of championship. That's a way to get some more college football. They got to do something, though, because we see all these teams opting out.
But that goes to my point, though. If you're a player, you'd rather be in the NIT if that's NIL push.
Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. Well, maybe you incentivize maybe that's built into contracts in the future moving forward. If your team makes the college football playoff, everybody gets a bump of, whatever X amount of dollars, whatever the case may be. All right, Chris, we got to go. They got to figure out a way to maintain that tradition of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, though, Chris. I'm with you on that. We need that edible edible mascot.
What about the Mayo Bowl?
I'm good with the Mayo Bowl. They can keep that mayo jar closed, but I would love the real life Pop-Tart to live on. Chris, thanks for coming on. Be well, all right?
Yeah, anytime, guys. Take care.
All right.